So this is a presentation by Harry Groot, Brad Matlack, and Steve Risacher. Did I say it right? Okay. So Harry has a mechanical engineering degree from Virginia Tech and currently works for Dovetail Partners. He has run multiple businesses and has a family farm in Virginia, which has completed multiple equip contracts. He has used and supplied biochar and authored a number of reports on biochar topics that can be found on the Dovetail Partners website, which you can find a link to in his bio. He works with Brad Matlack. So Brad is retired from the Carlton County Soil and Water Conservation District here in Minnesota, where he worked for 41 years implementing conservation practices across both Wisconsin and Minnesota. He witnessed a need for the development of higher uses of what he calls low quality but high quantity wood, an example of which is ash after it's been attacked by emerald ash borer. They're both going to talk about lessons learned from implementing NRCS 336 practice in northern Minnesota on 4 farms. Joining them for this presentation is Steve Risacher. He owns a farm in northern Minnesota in Carlton County and has been working with Equip Practice 336 to implement biochar. So with that, I'm going to let them take the stage.
Good afternoon. Thanks for coming back. I'm going to speak just briefly about the project itself. Wrong way. As Tara said, we have 3 team members here, myself, Brad, and Kurt Anderson with Minnesota Power, who is unable to be with us today. This is a 3-year-long project that we started 2 growing seasons ago now. We've got 1 more growing season to go to collect more data. And today what we're going to talk about is the lessons we've learned to date, which is mostly on application. The project had 3 goals, one of which Brad's really going to focus heavily on is the soil health aspect of the biochar applications. One of the other goals we proposed for the proposal was to compare commercially versus on-site made biochars, and I'm going to speak to that. And then sharing the lessons learned broadly. This is our first step, again, to talk about applications. Next year, we hope to be able to present the final data on our soil analyses and how the biochar has interacted. So the report on the comparison of biochars was published last month, and if you can write real quick, you can write down that web address, but the easy way is to go to the Dovetail Partners website and go to the reports and then input biochar, and you'll have the access to all our biochar report materials. What this report did specifically was compare a group of biochars made on site to commercial biochars, and some we also had data on which were made on a bench scale, pilot plants. And the findings basically from that study were that the biochars that we had that were made on site are comparable to those we were able to obtain commercially. We also compared just doing a proximal analysis versus the full IBI panel. All our products were tested at the same lab, so they were very comparable. And there's a link in the report to the spreadsheet, and we have, I think, 40-some biochars we tested. The thing which you've heard repeated over and over again, and I will repeat it one more time, is what's critically important is to match the biochar with your your target soil or whatever application you're doing. And that requires testing of both so you have an accurate match. I'm not going to go into detail. I'd encourage you to get the report and read it. We used one of the fact sheets, which Kristen and Debbie both pointed out earlier, are available on the US BI website that we developed. And that was the basis of the comparison in the different biochars. So I will be around tomorrow as well as later today if there's any questions about this. And now I'm going to turn it over to Brad because he's really the main show, talking about the farms we've done the demonstrations on.
Thank you, Harry. You hear that? I'm the main show. That's troubling. Can you folks hear me pretty good, or do I need to use the microphone? I'm kind of a pointer, so I'm going to maybe make you dizzy, but I'd rather stand out here. So I'm going to run through some of kind of the setup so you all know how we did things. We had a couple of goals going into this, and they're similar to what other presenters have talked about. We wanted to use common farm equipment that farmers in Carlton County just have on hand. And you'll see we went through a variety of different equipment. And we wanted to do it at a farm scale with bigger plots, and we wanted to do it according to the 336 standard. That was a bit of a challenge because when we started in 2022, the 336 standard was actually the 888 standard, which was an interim standard, but it since has turned into a 336 standard. So if you're not confused yet, just hang with me. So we wanted to do this on different types of soil, clay, loamy, sandy soils. We wanted to do it with the three common cropping systems in Carlton County, a row crop or small grain, hay and pasture. And we hit the mark pretty well. We have trials on all three different soils, and pasture and hayland, and we have one cropland site. We used a 40-60 mix ratio. You've heard, if you were in this session before, you heard a lot about combining or blending. We used a 40% biochar, 60% manure, on-site manure from the farmers that we partnered with, and Steve is here, and he's gonna, you'll be able to talk and interact with him and ask him questions. That came out of the EQIP, the NRCS EQIP payment scenarios back in 2022, which are all different now, of course. So, but we used it, that's what we based it on. We were going after the 336, and so we stayed with that. We piled it up, mixed it and piled it, and let it inoculate with the manure for at least 14 days. And we turned the piles at least once during that 14-day period. Our plot designs, you saw some earlier from other presenters. Ours are similar. We were shooting for 2 acres, each 2 acres. We have a control, a manure only, a biochar only, and then we have 2 different rates of 4 cubic yards per acre. I know there's a lot of different units here, but we used cubic yards, and an 8 cubic yard per acre. Whoop. And that again came out of recommendations from NRCS. And in each of those, we had a surface applied and an incorporated plot right side by side. So, and then we had alleys in between depending on the size of the spreaders, of the equipment being used, to try to minimize any overspread from a different trial plot. And our good friends, we didn't have access, I didn't know Debbie at the time, or I probably would have asked her, but we had access to local University of Minnesota Extension folks that helped us with this. So other speakers talked a little bit about this, and I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but there's kind of two main components of nutrient management. What kind of soil you have, what the soil needs, depending on what crop you're growing, and then what's in the material. Boy, this is a touchy little thing, isn't it? What's in the material that you're applying? Basic nutrient management. So we did a pre-application soil test to see where our baseline was. We used Ward Labs out of Lincoln, Nebraska. They have a soil health suite that tests for all of these parameters, your N, P, and K, some different carbon inputs, pH, organic matter. We also added in a soil respiration for microbial life, and then we also added in a water holding capacity test just to see where we were at. A little bit of micronutrients and a couple heavy metal or metal parameters too. So pretty. I mean, there's more tests you can do, but this was affordable for our project. We also had our manure biochar mix tested for many of the same things. Some of the iron, magnesium, zinc. Some of the micronutrients, N, P, and K, organic, carbon and the CN ratio, which is really important for soil health. I don't have a slide, but just to be clear, this project wasn't about carbon credits. That's a whole other world that I don't even try to understand. And it wasn't really even about yields, although I was taught how to do forage study sampling. I wouldn't say I'm the greatest at it, but I know how to do it. And so, you know, in terms of that yield, it's certainly a good selling point for farmers to be able to say you're going to increase your yield, right? I mean, but we're really focused at building the soil health and watching these parameters over time. So, as Harry said, we are in the second crop year. I just got done with soil sampling this summer and sent those into Ward Labs for analysis, and we'll have one more season next year to get our samples from.
Is this after the 14 days testing for this?
Yes. Yep. Thank you. 4 farms. Here we go. This is the good stuff. What'd you call me? The main?
Main show.
The main show. Here's the main show. This is actually Steve's hayfield. We have the standard plot here with 7 trials. They're downsized to fit this field, so they're only about just over an acre large. Soil type is it's a complex of loamy soils, amic, normana, kenosha. So pretty basic. Steve just mixed the manure and the biochar with a tractor loader. Very efficient. What surprised me in this, and maybe it shouldn't after 40-some years of working with farmers, you tell them you want a bucket full of manure, but if at a 40-60 ratio, well, I wouldn't do that again. I'd just call it a 50-50 ratio and call it good. But you say you want, you know, a little bit less than a bucket load of biochar, And they're over there, they'll scoop it up and raise it up and look in there, and then they'll shake a little out, and then they'll look at it again, and then they got a little more of it. I mean, we came pretty close here to as close as you can come without weighing every single thing. And you can see this one's kind of dark, but Steve made piles for each individual plot. So while he was here loading up his old HS spreader, I was about a mile away waiting for him to come over and lay it out on the ground. Horizontal feeder spreader, you can't see that the best here, but just your standard manure spreader. Now this is where the real magic happens. I gotta go behind the curtain. Uh-oh. I don't see, oh, hey. This is Steve in action. And you can see we're getting a pretty decent application there. Sorry for all the wind noise. This is real time. We're getting a pretty decent application there. So that's the mix going on with just a regular horizontal beater spreader. And that's the mix again. So in the biochar strip, happened to be a commercial fertilizer spreader on Steve's farm, just by happenstance. And I said, I wonder what would happen if we put biochar in there and tried that for spread. We want to just use as many different types of equipment as we can use and see what works and what doesn't. So here we go. I don't know if you're familiar with these. Obviously, you got the hopper here. It comes down to a conveyor belt in the bottom of this V, comes back and hits this whirligig, and out it goes. Very hard to see much here, but and this is only 4 yards per acre, so it's pretty light. This is a commercial spreader in action. And it's actually doing a pretty nice job of spreading. It's just very light. And we had to go over that. We had to go over that plot multiple times with that spreader to get that 4 yard per acre rate. Okay? And then on the incorporation, Steve just did a light disking. Not 100 miles an hour, seeing how far he could fling the soil, just light disking. Because this he had to hay this then the next summer.
Brad, if I may?
Yeah.
The commercial fertilizer spreader has a baffle in it, so it comes down and there's a baffle so that the commercial fertilizer, wasn't for biochar. Anyway, it bridged up in there, and we had a difficult time shoveling and making it work. So
Yeah, just like your slide of somebody.
lime spreader would be the thing. Don't try a commercial fertilizer spreader. Just the learning curve.
How much moisture was in that?
I think I have a slide on that.
I don't know.
I can't remember off the top of my head. It might be on a slide here later. Steve also had another little trial in the back. How many of you are familiar with bale grazing? Okay, couple. Well, it's pretty basic. It's feeding. I guess there's different ways of doing it, but Steve feeds round bales in round bale feeders throughout the winter, and he kind of lets the snow pile up and the cows just kind of use those bale feeders and they loaf around there and they lay on the hay spilt and so on and so forth. We only did 2 trials on this. We had the control and then we did an 8 yard per acre. And again, just the size of the field, we went down to an acre large. Same soil type. Well, that's interesting. How do you like that for the main show? Not sure what that one was. Uh-oh. Did I? It's still there. I did something nasty here, though. Help.
Where's the mouse here? There we go.
Sorry. User error. Down. Down. A little more. Oh, right.
This
Go.
one?
Nope.
This
Up
one.
There, perfect. Do you see the play button?
I did not.
I didn't see it either.
You want to keep going? Wait, what's this?
Yeah, it's ticking, but it's not showing. Well, Steve used it. We went back to, oh, go ahead.
I think it's a link. You control click on the picture and then
Oh, they were working so good.
Oh, okay, now you gotta sign in, okay. That's why.
For this one, that's all right. Just get me down to the next one there,
Okay.
Tara.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that one. For this one, Steve just went back to the H&S spreader, and I'll save you all the entry. Those spreaders are built for solid manure, okay? So that really fine grained biochar, it spread it, but it left some pretty piled up trails too. Wasn't the best, but it did work. The beauty of this was there was no manure spreading. There was actually not even, the manure is provided by the animals. The biochar we put on one plot, and they just mixed it in with the hoof traffic. And they actually did, I'm sorry, this one's kind of, either my slides are washed out or they're dark. But you can actually see the biochar down in the hoof prints and all over here at the 8 yard per acre. It didn't come through as well as I would have liked to. Sorry about that. But this is interesting. Very low input. I think a really excellent way to go. This is a slide, Steve. I want to make sure you see this one. I took this off of the county GIS site, and kudos to Steve. You can see every bale feeder that he put throughout these whole 2 plots here. It's pretty amazing. You tell these guys you want something, and this is the kind of stuff we get. It's top notch. Really did a nice job with that. I better speed up a little bit here. I'm usually going fast. This next field was, there was no manure available for this one. We had some extra room on the semis coming up. Did I mention that the char came from Terrachar in Missouri? I didn't, it did. We had some extra room on a semi-trailer. We got 3 semi-trailers full. And so I talked with Kurt Anderson from Minnesota Power. This is one of their company's fields. rented out for, leased out for hay. Very low management. This is on cloquet, fine sandy loam soil. Not very much inputs, not very good quality forage. We got alder and willow and all sorts of things mixed in here. We got it cropped. We used yet another method. This was a contractor because they don't have any equipment. This was a contractor with a parking lot salt spreader on the front of a skid steer. And this is very much like the photo you shared, kind of a big hopper there with the whirligig, and it has a different size opening to pour out onto the whirligig, and then that flings it out on the field. I'm not too optimistic about this. I don't know why we, oh no, this one shows me. It also did a pretty decent job. Yeah. I don't know if I'd say the ground, but maybe the grass. Yeah, so that was an interesting trial. We did 4, 8, and 12 cubic yards there. Incorporated all of those with a light disking again. And I think that's key, if you can do it, to get that biochar or the mix down into the soil profile. Then we moved down to Holyoke. We did a forage day down there last fall about this time with Bruce Heikes. Bruce was on the agenda to be here, but he's combining. So he's fallen behind with the poor weather lately. This is our full 7 trial plot, 2 acres. You know, the full 7 trials on either Ontonagon or Berglund clay soils. That stuff is, it's very dense. We also did a pasture plot, just kitty corner from there. Oddly, this is a kind of a sand and gravel pit that they use for road maintenance. But we downsized the trials a little bit. What happened was things got too wet to incorporate on that clay, so we just doubled the size of our surface applied, and we don't have the incorporation on those plots. That's farming, right? I mean, I'm not going to tell him to go out there and dig up his clay. He wouldn't anyways. He would tell me to get off the farm, but that's just the way that one went. And then our only small grain plot was on Bruce's farm over in Wisconsin, just across the line. We knew that he was going to disc this all in after application. So on this one, I couldn't really say, well, don't disc, this plot. I could, but again, he'd probably throw me off the farm. So we were being realistic and just said, okay, we'll just not look at the surface applied. We'll just compare. We still have good comparisons here. And a little bit smaller, again. Yeah, it's either feast or famine on that clay. The only time it rained in 2023 was like the week after we took delivery of the biochar. And we just couldn't really do anything on the clay in terms of spreading. But they did get this stuff mixed up. Well, it was still pretty nice. And then we did some applications after that. This is in December. Let's see if this one's gonna work. Yep. This is vertical feeder manure spreader. I don't know if there's a more technical term, but that's my term for them. And this is just throwing out the biochar. Actually did, I thought, probably one of the best jobs. And that's actually pretty close to that 4 cubic yard per acre application rate. And then I was taking on pretty heavy chunks of frozen stuff, and I just got wiped up. No, I didn't. But you can see the plot afterwards there, just enough snow on the ground in December. Apparently it rained all the time in October, and it didn't have any moisture left to give us anything in the winter of 2023, because it was amazingly devoid of snow. One more action shot here. This is how Bruce, and actually his son Bradley, decided to mix this. Put a scoop of manure in this spreader, put a scoop of biochar in the spreader, back it over there, and let it rip. And an amazing job. Did a really nice job. And of course, I mean, this is December, so there's a little bit of big stuff, but it all mixed in the end. And then they kind of policed up the pile with the bucket and loader. And then we were ready to go. I sure have to apologize a lot for the main show. I sure have to apologize for my pictures there. This was the 8 cubic yard per acre surface applied on the pasture. Did this in February, believe it or not. February in northern Minnesota, unheard of. There was just no snow. It was cold, but there was no snow. And this is the rye field application. I don't know if this is, oh yeah. I wonder what was wrong with that one single video. This is the mix again going on in the rye field. I mean, talking about bugs over there, oh my gosh. Mosquitoes, of course, the application, the final rate is determined by the speed. It's only going to come out so fast out of the spreader. So, and Steve can tell you that 4 yard per acre rate, that's kind of teeth jarring on kind of an uneven field. So. Okay, we're good. Farm number 3. No, farm number 4 in county. This is a sheep farm, not too far from the town of Carlton, where I live. Low organic matter. The producers have just the most beautiful system of rotational paddock grazing here for their sheep, but this farm has been used and abused, and not the worst of which was this horse racing track. So that was all excavated out and piled around, so there's absolutely no topsoil there. There's not very much on the top of this hill anyways. Sandy soils, sandy loam soils, highly altered. We got the stuff mixed up. Had a little problem. This farmer didn't have the equipment to spread, so he was going to contract with the guy that had the parking lot salt spreader, and he wasn't going to use that here, but he was going to bring in another manure spreader. That couldn't happen. It got rainy. In the end, I talked with Harry and I said, we kind of have a chance here to to alter our course a little bit. We have those 3 other farms where we did kind of our standard plot at various sizes. I said, you know what I'd really like to do is focus a fair amount of our resources on this highly degraded area and see if we can have an impact on that low carbon, low organic matter, depleted soil. And Harry said, yeah, why not? So we still do have a biochar only and a manure only, and we have a control over here, but we have about 14 yards per acre here on a very small concentrated place. And to match the concentration, I was able to work with the University of Minnesota Duluth Land Lab and get this little guy, and emphasize little. It's hooked up behind a side-by-side there, as you can see. Earth and Turf is the brand name. And this just has, it actually goes towards the front on this little rubber conveyor belt, and this lever raises a gate in the front here that controls the size of the opening. And it's just called a drop spreader. It's not built to fling it anywhere, and it pretty much just drops. Not ideal, but worth a try. If we had, and this is where it came in handy, is on the side slopes of that horse track, which would have been difficult to do with other equipment. Oh boy, I'm really going long. You can see it just kind of lays it down in a band. Not the best, but very, very good for a small targeted area. And then he came along with, I guess I'd call it a spike tooth drag, and hit that. And that did help with dispersion quite a bit. It didn't really get it down into the soil profile, maybe down into the grass, but just kind of leveled it out a little bit. I gotta speed this up or Steve's not gonna get a chance to talk. Lessons learned so far. A couple real easy things. Despite being told that this stuff was going to show up on a conveyor belt, self-unloading trailer with a scale on board, it came on this. I got a call, I don't know, from Steve at about 7 in the morning, and he said, there's a semi out here. I had no idea that they were out there. No forewarning. I said, I'll be out. Tell them to wait. I get out there. We had overhead electrical lines to deal with. This guy wasn't exactly happy. So you really got to plan your drop site. That's moral of that story. Pretty simple. These trucks, at least the ones coming from Terrachar, and it's not Terrachar that's doing the trucking. They farm that out to a trucking company, and they have over-the-road trucks. That's what you're going to get. You're not going to get very far off the beaten path. We ordered our char, there you go, 62% moisture content. And for us, wetted equals stick. It's stuck in that, it's stuck in the commercial fertilizer spreader. It's stuck in the parking lot salt spreader. We didn't lose much to wind or anything, but the stickiness was a challenge. So you got to plan for that. Materials, like I said, every way we tried was mixed pretty well. If you've never seen the close-up of these vertical beater spreaders, they're the best of both worlds. They have these beaters that there's a chain that's moving the material back to these beaters, but there's also the whirligigs on the bottom whipping out the fine stuff too. So I think that's why it could handle the biochar probably a little better than the one that Steve was using. In terms of biochar spreaders, like I said, I think Bruce's probably did the best job. You can see there's a lot of space here in Steve's spreader where that material is just getting drug along by the apron chains and dropped through without even contacting the beaters. So, but this did okay. And these were a challenge just because of stickiness and the rates. We had to run over things a couple times. I think the regular manure spreaders both did a stand-up job. I don't know what would do better. You know, you get a little bit of clumping, but come on, this is a manure spreading application. It's, you know. That little earth and turf, that was a challenge. It was interesting to try. I thought it would work better, but it was pretty small, and the material was pretty wet in there and clumpy, and that rubber belt didn't do the best of moving stuff around. If I have a summary statement, it's pretty basic. Just try to match your application equipment to the material that you have to be spread and the site restrictions. You know, if you have little areas, small areas you're trying to do, you know, then you don't probably want the spreader that has a 30-foot spreading width. But you just have to kind of give all that consideration before everything's sitting in a pile in your yard ready to go. Couple more slides here. Still to come, Seamus McCarthy built this database for us. I won't even try to tell you how it works because I don't know, but we can plot all of these different soil parameters that we're measuring in all of these different trials, and so on all of our farms. So in this example, we can compare the bulk density between the biochar only at 4 yards and the manure only, or the biochar mix at 8 yards. We'll be able to compare that, any of these different parameters that we're measuring, over our 3 years of data. And this is all, it all starts with the pre-application figure. So we'll be able to look at that. We'll be able to compare applications on sandy soils compared to clay soils. We'll be able to compare side-by-side comparisons. So that's kind of exciting. And then this is for lack of a better term right now, I called it a scorecard. You've heard a little bit about these resource concerns for 336 practice. Organic matter, soil carbon, organism habitat, and the aggregate stability. That's over further off of here, but those are the 4 qualifying resource concerns. Some farmers don't necessarily know what that means. I didn't necessarily know what aggregate stability means, but we get numbers from the pre-application testing, and we plot those against kind of the range that is ideal for the range you're looking for in those. And then we can color these cells, good, bad, and ugly, yellow, green, and red, as just an indication kind of where you are. And then we can come back and do this again in a few years and compare and see if those soil health parameters were affected and in which way. And these were just our partners for the project.